Welcome back to the channel and great to have you here as always. So we actually have a trailer for The Exorcist Believer as well as the release date of October the 13th of this year 2023. Right, so this is a tricky one to digest or even get excited about, isn't it? I've always loved watching all types of movies, but horror films are very close to the heart for me. The Exorcist, made in 1973 and directed by William Friedkin, just so happens to be objectively one of the greatest horror films in existence. So what usually happens when they add continuation to a masterpiece? Yeah, you guessed it. Oh, and by the way, we recently received the sad news that William Friedkin, who, as I said, directed the first Exorcist movie, had passed away recently on August the 7th at the age of 87. He had inspired so many filmmakers such as Jason Blum, the founder of Blumhouse Productions, the very studio responsible for this movie we are talking about today in the video, but just impressing upon so many other filmmakers and sending out shockwaves with the awe-inspiring triumph that was The Exorcist and its power to sow terror into our hearts for generations to come. The film was actually banned and removed from shelves in the UK from 1988 to 1999, would you believe? This was mainly due to reports of incidents of hysteria involving young women, which led to concerns that the film may be causing severe emotional problems among those who believed in the reality of demonic possession. Crazy stuff, but I just wanted to articulate the effect the film had on people. The first time I saw The Exorcist was when I was around 11 or 12, as my parents refused to let me watch it for so long, even though I tried to make the case that I'd already watched Alien and The Thing, so why not The Exorcist? The two moments that scared me the most and will always stick with me were the strange scratching noises that persisted in the attic before the possession took hold. The second scene that really shook me up was when the possessed girl, played by Linda Blair, descended the stairs on all fours with her body facing the ceiling. I'll never forget the fright I experienced seeing that for the first time. So with many copies and reimaginings later, some being pretty good films I might add, I particularly remember liking The Exorcism of Emily Rose and also The Last Exorcism. I thought they were good attempts to create something scary, but let's fast forward to the latest Exorcist installment, which is The Exorcist Believer. I'll try to stay as neutral as possible when I talk about this film, but let's face it, when we horror fans get burned so many times by failed attempts in the past to capture the magic of the originals, it's funny how you instantly can recognise all the clues telling us not to bother with this one. But let's have a look, as the film could turn out to be great, you never know. The studio Blumhouse have made some excellent horror movies in the past. From the early days of scaring the shit out of me with Paranormal Activity, and then in more recent years I thought the remake of The Invisible Man was pretty exceptional. The trailer seems to suggest that while the two girls, who are friends, go missing for 3 days on what should have been a normal trip to school and back, they somehow have both become possessed by a familiar demonic presence. I say familiar because later in the trailer we of course have the introduction of Ellen Burstyn, who played the mother of the possessed child in the original film. It does appear to be a bit of a trend at the moment to bring back everyone for nostalgia reasons, but it does also add a bit of gravity to the performances, I would say. Honestly, I don't mind it. I have a lot of respect for these veteran actors and the body of work they have given us over the years. For instance, seeing Carl Weathers in The Mandalorian, or even in the Cobra Kai series when they pretty much revived the entirety of the original cast back for another swing, was kind of fun. Back to the movie at hand though, we witness the usual scenes of interrogation and diagnosis at the hospital, although you can bet your boots the two girls won't be getting the help they need there. So therefore, the father has no other option than to seek out the only other person known to have experienced a similar ordeal. I wonder who that is. Yes, it's Chris MacNeil, the mother in The Exorcist from 1973. This poor woman is going to be put through the ringer once again. What a way to enjoy your retirement. So with her experience, probably some random priest, as well as the father for support, then I guess we have an exorcism. But if I am to be critical, so far the trailer doesn't exactly ooze originality and the formula appears a little predictable, doesn't it? Not much in the trailer scares me, unfortunately, nor did many things stick with me as an afterthought. In fact, I had to watch it several times because I'd already kind of forgotten what I saw. But I would like to take this opportunity to remind myself that a bad trailer doesn't always mean a bad movie. One thing I did find interesting, and I could be very wrong however, is it implied that the shared mannerisms and language of the two girls, as well as their synchronised heartbeats displayed on the sensors beating in unison, will they both be possessed by the same entity perhaps? It was complicated as I remember from the seminal Exorcist film because the demon displayed a multitude of voices and then claimed there were many different entities in active possession of the same host. I feel like this was proven to be lies and trickery told by the demon and then debunked within the same film by the Exorcist himself, played by the mighty Max von Sydow. So who knows what they have in store regarding the most unholy of antagonists, but I do know for certain that there is a friggin' army of hardcore Exorcist fans out there that have already predicted mass disappointment if they do not do this film justice. I think the best part of the trailer was the end. Sorry, I don't mean that sarcastically, but the last few shots were actually kind of disturbing. Firstly, it switches to a sort of black and white monochrome, but more stylistic, like a photography trick with high exposure. These last few scenes are riddled with extremely unsettling vocal sounds of the beast that we were confronted with back in the original. Somehow grotesquely inhuman yet familiar, but not distinct enough to make out a recognisable language. That feels like horror to me. Please let that part of the trailer represent the actual tone of the whole film, then you will have won us over. A couple of things I didn't like was the constant teasing of the Tubular Bells music. Most of us have heard this amazing soundtrack by now, and for most of us it has emotions attached to it. But it was just the way they bash us over the head with it that annoyed me. It's like, yes, we know it's a sequel to The Exorcist, but here's a reminder. Then as we try to get a sense of the plot from the trailer, bam, here's another reminder, and another. It's like, please just stop with that, you know? I'm sure they did the same trick when promoting the recent sequels in the Halloween franchise. Which reminds me, the director David Gordon Green of Exorcist Believer also directed the recent sequel trilogy of the Halloween movies. I enjoyed the first, but thought the ending was a bit terrible, and I still haven't managed to see the second and third. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments on those films, as well as what you think how you think the director will handle this project. I'd really love to know. The other moment that made me switch off a bit as I started to roll my eyes back was when you see the possessed girl slowly walk through the aisle of a packed church covered in blood and muttering some nonsense to herself. She just appears a little too poised and composed, you know, very unlike someone possessed. The churchgoers have an overly dramatic pretend look of shock on their faces, and there just feels like a severe lack of tension in the air. If you compare this scene to the original film, where Regan leaves her bedroom and appears downstairs whilst her mother is having a party, she then utters "You're going to die up there" to one of the guests, who was an astronaut with a planned trip ahead of him, and then to everyone's dismay and horror, Regan begins to urinate on the carpet. There was something genuinely unsettling about this scene. The air was very thick with suspense.
You're gonna die up there.
Nothing gory or violent happened, and no explicit use of language was said, yet we, the audience, are left almost a little traumatised from the experience, especially knowing the possession has only begun to take hold. So if the church scene in the trailer is anything to go by, sadly I don't think we are going to get anything anywhere near on par with the masterclass that William Friedkin gave us in 1973. I can't speak for kids today, but for most of us, we grew up with religion. Whether we believed in it or not, it was around us in stories and culture. I'm certain what made The Exorcist so effective in creating unprecedented terror was how it overlapped with our reality and many people's faith in the existence of heaven and hell and all the beings born of those worlds. So to summarise, I can't tell for sure how impressive this film will be, as the trailer has snippets of interesting scenes but is mainly tarnished by way too many common and modern horror tropes we see far too often in horror films these days. I hope it takes us by surprise, I really do. I want a good horror film. But Jason Blum, the CEO of Blumhouse Productions, had this to say to Collider: "I want to make a movie that works for both audiences. I want to make a movie for people that know and love The Exorcist, and that are furious we are doing this, but somehow drag themselves to the theatre. I want them to come out happy. I want to make a movie that people who've never heard of The Exorcist really enjoy. I think David did that with Halloween. I think he'll do it again with The Exorcist also." So make of that what you will. Which of you liked the recent Halloween films, and how many of you are quite apprehensive about The Exorcist Believer after the treatment of Halloween? Anyway, it's out in October. In the meantime, stay chill, relaxed and positive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.